Moving into how to reform the government, talk about do you have a dollar figure that you could cite regarding campaign finance reform, limiting the influence of money in politics, or a system in mind?
To put dollar figures on something is very difficult, especially the value of the dollar changes quite frequently.
Yeah.
However, the proportional representation system that's used in Scandinavia and other parts of Europe.
IRV.
No,
Oh.
IRV is a
I see.
substitute.
You're talking about on the ballot, which we don't have. You're represented according to the party or the group that you vote for.
Yes. For instance, in Sweden, there are 7 parties in the parliament. There are more parties than that. You need, in order to get official party status, you need 5% of the vote, I think, in Sweden. But so if you are in that 5% vote category, which 7 or more parties are, then according to the percentage of the vote that you get in an election, that's the number of representatives you get. So the representatives in the state legislature could be apportioned to each party. Then the money goes to the party, and this allows, one Swedish prime minister was a carpenter. He had no money. Many of the politicians in Sweden have no financial background at all because of the proportional representation system and the lack of the need for a candidate to be wealthy. Mm-hmm. And the candidates don't need money. The parties are proportionally represented. And once you're in the parliament and you have the state money coming in from the parliamentary salaries, there's money there for the party to keep itself going. And there's no real need for contributions. Mm. So at that point, I would say you could make any political contribution illegal. Mm. But it would have to be a give and take situation and seeing how things go. But starting with the basic principle that we're not a democracy of $1, one vote. We're a democracy of one person, one vote. And we have to eliminate the influence of money on politics.
Yeah, totally. Now, sometimes in government, there are whistleblowers who come forth and spill the beans about something or other, but there have been laws passed recently in the United States, in the Congress, and court rulings that have actually taken away the cover of these whistleblowers and made them subject to penalties, which is mind-boggling, that they would incur from spilling state secrets or even corporate secrets. Tell me your whistleblower reform.
Well, that's absolutely unconscionable that a whistleblower should be punished for exposing wrongdoing. The Ellsberg is an example of the great good that can be done by exposing government wrongdoing. So I would absolutely protect whistleblowers. I would introduce legislation to make it illegal to fire a whistleblower or to punish them in any way. And you have to go even further than that. How about tenants? If your landlord is not maintaining the building according to the city code, which the government requires for the safety of everyone, if a tenant complains, is a landlord entitled to evict them as punishment for complaining? Yeah. I would protect tenants' rights too.
Yeah, yeah. Sibel Edmonds also comes to mind, who is a Pentagon translator who was translating from one language into another. I think it was Turkish information about 9/11 way before it happened, and she has been prosecuted by the government for trying to get this known before and after 9/11, and was slapped with a law, State Secrets Act law, that prohibits her from speaking about this publicly. I mean, it's another glaring
that's
example.
another example. And
Summing up, would you be in favor of what Sibel Edmonds is basically under a sort of house arrest for suffering from, which is the 9/11 situation that she tried to warn people about? No one in the government wanted her to speak out about this. Our Vermont's adherence to allowing our National Guard troops to go fight those wars which were created by 9/11, and the people who were in charge when 9/11 occurred, when the wars started, the Bush gang. If I can wrap it up in a kind of an omnibus question, talking about a 9/11 investigation, stopping the Vermont National Guard from being in those wars that were created by 9/11, and then prosecuting the Bush gang for having started all this.
Yes, George Bush lied to us about weapons of mass destruction. Iraq wasn't, even if you believe that bin Laden caused the attack on 9/11, everyone recognizes that Iraq had nothing to do with it. And Bush led us into a war in Iraq, and many young Vermonters have been killed, and they're coming back with PTSD. That's murder. And I would agree with Charlotte Dennett that he and Cheney and everyone else involved in that deception should be prosecuted for murder. Now, that doesn't even include the question of 9/11. I advocate a new independent investigation of 9/11. The official investigation was obviously tainted and whitewash, or whatever you want to call it, but we don't know what really happened on 9/11, and we need a new investigation. And the government in Washington has proven itself to be a very questionable investigator. I would like to see an international investigation, something like the court in Hague or the UN, that could do a real investigation and find out what really happened. And if it turns out that that Bush was also behind 9/11, I would want to see him prosecuted for that too.
And in so doing, with all of this, end Vermont's involvement in these Bush wars.
Yes, now there's a question. For instance, Dennis Steele, who is running for governor now, as an independent, for an independent Vermont, his position is that the governor, if I understand his position correctly, he would say that the governor has the right to order the Vermont State Guard home from all foreign wars, regardless of what the President Obama says. Now, I would support his position on that, and I believe that even though it's the legalities are questionable, for instance, some other candidates for governor would say that we would bring the Vermont troops home, but the governor doesn't have the legal authority to order them home against the president's wishes. Well, it's a legal question, and I would say that the governor should order them home, and then we fight the question in the courts and to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court rules against us, well, then everyone can see where Vermont stands.
Unless, as you would like, Vermont to become an independent nation once again, an independent republic,
well, of
and
course,
be able to pass its own laws, bringing its troops home.
Yes, I would like to see Vermont independent, like Sweden, and I would hope that for the next 200 years we would not have a war. Whether the American Empire continued on its warlike path or not, I would like to see the end of the American wars. But for Vermont, there's no reason why we couldn't follow the example of Sweden and Switzerland and end our involvement in wars.
I'm thinking that we don't have much time. Would you like to sum up?
Well, I think we've covered pretty well my platform, and I urge the people in Chittenden County to vote for me on November 2nd, and I will do the best in the legislature to represent you. I will follow generally the platform of the Progressive Party, and I will work with the progressives in the legislature. But with the exception, of course, of the points that we have mentioned, that I will support independence for Vermont if the opportunity arises, and I will support and agitate for further investigation of the 9/11 attacks. And I will do everything I can to end Vermont's involvement in the wars.
Thank you, Richard Jeroloman.
Thank you, Greg.
Oh, my pleasure.